Hey, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei El Bob. And don't believe a word I say. Faces.
Well,
It's December 3rd,
red-combed
2023.
Leghorn deserves his moment in the sun. Jump in.
There's some feathers on the breast, a little bit fluffy. It's like it's not real clean done.
Because I feel like adolescence is such a weird time, and I mean, so much of my energy was going toward acting like I had it all together, when in fact I was falling apart on a.
He drove past as the action was starting. Hindered by UN restrictions blocking protesters from raising Palestinian flags or naming any specific country, demonstrators held banners with watermelons painted on them, a well-known symbol of the Palestinian movement, as the fruit bears Palestine's national colors, red, black, and green. The UAE bans protests and organized groups, but has allowed some actions during the summit. Protesters were also prohibited from chanting phrases like "from the river to the sea" and "free Palestine." Some still did in defiance. Several wore Palestinian keffiyehs. Dozens of protesters wept as speakers read some of the names of the over 15,000 Palestinians killed by Israeli strikes in Gaza since October 7th, including more than 6,000 children.
And this is of December 5th, 2023.
When human rights are under attack, what do we do?
We'll be reading for you today from the Gaza Ministry of Health a list of names of all those who've been killed since October 7th.
This assault on Gaza was raised by Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, by Gustavo Petro of Colombia, and other world leaders.
Absolutely, and world leaders were allowed to speak and raised it, and we were very welcome, and we're glad that they did. But we as civil society have had very, very many challenging conversations to be even able to say the word ceasefire. We were not allowed to talk about apartheid. We're not allowed to say the word settler colonialism. You may have noticed that those banners had certain other variations of words on them, and this is because our own language was being policed, and we think that that's totally inappropriate. It's not for the UN to decide. In fact, we are using language that the United Nations itself uses, its own human rights experts use, its own UN agencies are saying there is a system of apartheid, ethnic cleansing is taking place.
Well, I want to go to someone who was allowed to speak, and that is Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia. This was what he said when he addressed the UN Climate Summit here in Dubai.
Los invito a que imaginemos una fusión.
I invite you to think about a fusion, a combination of events, the climate crisis and the genocide of the Palestinian people. Are these events disconnected? Is my question. Or are we seeing here a mirror of what is going to happen in the future? The genocides and the barbaric acts unleashed against the Palestinian people is what awaits those who are fleeing south because of the climate crisis.
La mayor parte de las víctimas climáticas que
most victims, which will be counted in the billions, will be in those countries that do not emit CO2 or emit very little. Without the transfer of wealth from the north to the south, the climate victims will increasingly have less drinking water in their homes, and they will have to migrate north, where the melting glaciers will make it possible for people to have drinking water. But exodus, resilience. violence and barbaric acts committed. This is what is happening in Gaza. This is crucial for the future. Why have the major carbon-consuming nations made it possible for the systemic killing of thousands of children in Gaza is my question. Because if they do not kill them, they will invade their country to prevent them from consuming their carbon. We can therefore see what the future will look like. There will be a shrinking of democracy and unleashed barbaric acts against our people. Those of us who do not emit CO2. Those of us who are poor.
That's the Colombian President Gustavo Petro speaking here at the UN Climate Summit in the United Arab Emirates in
And this
Dubai.
is December 5th,
Raymond, so
2023.
let's talk about this climate summit. If you can talk about issues of loss and damage, and just remember for a global audience, people don't even know what loss and damage means. There's a lot of jargon that keeps people out of understanding what's taking place.
Absolutely. So we started this climate summit with a warning that we're currently headed at least to 2.9 degree warming. And if we think about the violence and the impacts that happen in the United States, all over the world, that's all happening at just over 1 degree warming. So 2.9 is going to be devastating. Some estimate we're closer to heading towards 4 degrees if all the new fossil fuel expansion, particularly by countries like the US, UK, and the European Union, comes on stream. The big question here is basically, will rich countries live up to their responsibility to act? And instead, they've been pushing that action onto other countries. Now, those damages that are happening, and those are economic and social. And just to put into context, if we remember the floods in Pakistan that happened last year, they were cost Pakistan $35 billion. That was the damage. And developing countries have been saying for a long time to rich countries, you caused this problem. Are you going to help us deal with its impacts? And rich developed countries have been saying, no, we don't. But finally here, we got a fund. But then the big question came, who's going to put money into it? And developed countries said, we're not going to be liable. In fact, the United States put a paltry $17 million into that fund. The very next day announced billions in money for missiles and bombs to Israel and to Ukraine. So it shows you the disparity of what's going on. And this has been a long-standing issue. The second thing, the big thing that's happening here is what they call a global stocktake. And this is really the idea of you see how far we've come in progress, and then you decide how much more do we need to do. And again, rich countries have come there and said, forget what's happened in the past. We might not have acted in the past. Forget all of that we're responsible for all that. Now we just have to look towards the future. And developing countries are saying, but hold on, the majority of what's happened now is because of your past, because you've polluted so much. You have to take responsibility. And that falls into the conversations about finance. And of course, and interestingly, and what a lot of commentators, a lot of civil society are looking at, is a new conversation happening here, which is called the just transition pathway. In the United States, we've seen the IRA,
A just transition. That just transition is going to be a Gaza world, right? Where the rich, go watch the movie Zardos, right? The uber rich, the handful, that 1/2 of 1%, will have their domed bucolic valleys, where everything is beautiful, that there's plenty of water, clean air. There's an electromagnetic bubble over the whole 100 square mile area, and there'll be little villages, and everyone will have what they want, but they will be a scarce population. And what they don't realize is that they have built their own jail, their own prison. Right? Yes, they're very beautiful, very calm. Goat's milk cheese and fresh baked bread, and a very bucolic world, and you can read poetry to each other, but you won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to see what it is about your own life. You won't have perspective. Main reason why we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden is that God wanted to see his own reflection and what it would do in a trying environment. That was the original sin, and that's why God basically had to get on the cross God's self, right? Jesus is God. He had to sacrifice because that's what God had to learn is about that sacrifice. Now, the bottom line is it's a real problem with the rest of the humanity, right? Because they're not human. They are basically mud puppets. They aren't part of all our relations. That's every warm, cold-blooded, scaled, feathered, skinned, furred character. I mean, we're realizing more and more. Our science is realizing that animals, like all animals, even ants, everybody has got a consciousness. It's different, but whales and dog. I mean, every animal. If you own a dog or a cat, you can see their personality. If you've dealt with any sea creatures, you see their personality. If you've ever been around dolphins or whales, or even fish for that matter, they all have personalities. Snakes have personalities. I got a lot of snakes around me. And early on, I said, listen, guys, there's a bunch of owls that live here. They're my family, and they'll take you out. So just go a little further over there into the woods and be happy. And they have, right? Now, because of what the rich people have done, the owls have moved a little further. They're still in my neighborhood. They still come and visit. And they used to live there. And now they have gone further up into into the national forest. So because it was, the people who moved around me, now they've all left because they just couldn't take it. And, the quiet, the fact that they had to drive 40 miles to get a beer, there was no, cable or this or that. Now they've just put in the internet using federal money, and they use the lowest common denominator subcontractor, and they just strung the cable all over the place. Like, you can hear the noise, right? That is symbolizes that noise symbolizes people who have to have every blade of grass in place, everything looking great. Now, when they get done here next door, make it look like a golf course. Tomorrow's supposed to be a big storm, so there's going to be a lot of rain, a lot of things that they put up, like that they just put in the ground. I don't know, $200 or $300 worth of flowers and sod, and that'll be rolling down the hill. Anyway, this is at my neighbor's house, um, and they always have packages. So, me, I like it natural, and it's still beautiful. Right? I mow the lawn. They got a big fancy mower, so they gave me their push mower, which was very nice. Because I got a little strip of a lawn. It's basically my driveway, and you know, I got up this morning around 7 before the sun came over the hill. It was 58 degrees. It was cool. I took me all of about 30 minutes. I did half of it in 15 minutes. Went and made myself some oatmeal and sat on the hill and watched the folk and the folk meaning the birds. And so all of this noise that was going on just relevant to what's going on. Like a little news of the COP and the environmental catastrophe and the war in Gaza, And I saw all this coming back in the 1970s when I was at the United Nations. We had our little NGO of alternative technologies, and by what we were putting together,
Well, a fluffy, red-combed leghorn deserves his moment in the sun. Look at the image. And I'm not talking about any chicken. I'm talking about, you can just picture this, beautiful leghorn, his tail perked up, and that red comb sitting at kind of a rakish angle on his head, and his head kind of cocked to the side, and he looks at you with his little eyes. That's what this story is about.
That is not just what this story is about. That is what a lot of today's radio show is about.
that leg-combed rooster, you know, So this show really only works when there's a conversation. Like, this is a live chat. I can tell you stories. I can play things off the radio. But I'll show you the stuff off of what's going on. But let's see what's going on. See what our boy Johnny Boy is doing. He really hasn't done anything. He just on stuff he's done months ago. That's what the end of the world sounds like. So like I said, this is a live chat. So jump in any place you want. Remember, put it in. I love that two-stroke gasoline smell. I mean, I am a leaf blower. It's electric, right? It's battery powered. It's not as loud. Doesn't smell bad. And I just use it for little things like this, that, and the other thing. No, nothing big. But so this year, next year, between now and 2030, things are just kind of weirder and weirder and weirder. So what I played you early, like 19 minutes ago, was from early December of 2023. And if you listen to that and compare it to what you listen today on the news, you'd think you're on a different planet. And people, it doesn't seem to phase them whatsoever. And right now it's super duper hot. It's just middle of June. Right? Usually around this place it's in the 60s right now. Right now it's probably in the 90s. Right? That's we normally don't have more than a few of those days, but you know. And the other scene, see the trees that across the way? There are hills on the other side. Normally you can see them, but the aluminum and the other metals that have been sprayed into our upper atmosphere has turned our sky into silver rather than blue. Anyway, so in your neighborhoods, what are you going to do? So even though I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I'm organizing folks to have an eco village, to grow their own food. Right? And it's interesting how people tell me about things and can't put it into context of that their life is changing because the world around them is changing because we're in an environment that is sick. Why are all the corals bleaching? Why are people, the biggest killer on earth, the biggest killer in the United States, biggest weather killer in the United States is heat. So that is the real issue. And it's not just global warming from your exhaust pipe. No, the planet is going through a number of things, and it deals more with the spiritual nature than the physical metaphor, because humanity itself is out of balance. We're not all our relations. We're not in co-creation with loves, with Mother Nature and Spirit. And the big sin that you read the Bible about, fornication. What is fornication? It is not sex. It is expressing oneself on that level without any connection to God. Because when you're expressing yourself in that motif, you're basically calling yourself God. When we look at John, is basically calling him, everyone you see is basically calling themselves God. Now I've gotten rid of everything in material, not everything, but 98% of everything, because I am material. I have a baseball cap, but the birds, stop using lawnmower, stop spelling nasty smells. Birds come around. Wherever I go, birds show up. So it's what are you going to do about this, about your life? You couldn't really cut down on everything. So don't buy anything on Amazon. Get things at your basic yard sale, flea market. Don't buy new clothes. Wear the same ones. I don't even have a place. How I wash my clothes. I put them up on the line, spray them with some detergent, liquid detergent, and then it rains. Right? Then the sun comes out, it dries them out. I spit them down with a little more that. It rains again. After it rains 3 times and it's sunny on it for about 2 days, it's dry as a bone, and the rain and the soap have washed off whatever smutch was there, and the ultraviolet kills whatever could be there, right? So, um, Anyone have any ideas? Has anyone opened up a restaurant? There's a restaurant that is traditionally known as Stone Soup. And what it is, it's a restaurant that basically gets the food out of the dumpster, cooks it up, feeds it to people. If you have money, you can throw it into the basket. If not, don't worry about it. That's a Stone Soup restaurant or a dumpster dive restaurant. And a guy that has, diners, things, and dives, roadhouses, dives, he's trying to go for a feeling of that, of community, right? But it's always, on the upscale end of things, right? Everyone's going for the upscale end of things. You go for the upscale end of things, and you're going to use that scale up, leaving 95% of the population with no part of the scale whatsoever. Ugh. So, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? You can step away from the car crash on the corner. You don't have to be drawn to if it bleeds, it leads. And let your heart's empathy feel for other people and be there for them. See it. So, it's up to you and your neighbor and your brother and your sister. What are you going to do? You could make a comment. How do you feel about the life that you're living right now? How are you feeling about what's going on? Well, let's see what this is. This is March 3rd.
Someone so clearly isn't presidential material. Yes. It just looks like a money laundering op.
Lives in you, and now you are walking in this newness of life that even Titus 3, 5, and 6 says, not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his mercy he saved us by the washing and regeneration. Times, seemingly in a part of a different reality in which he imagines how he would like things to be and then describes them as if that were reality. So we will see how he is restrained here, but his last salvo on social media, Truth Social, his own social media, was extraordinary and vituperative and went on and on and on, and much of it was all caps, the online equivalent of shouting or screaming. And this was blaming all of the people we've talked about, the judge and the district attorney and so forth. And that would seem to be clearly violative, and we will see if that kind of behavior at least is restrained.
We're here with Ron Elving, senior editor and correspondent for NPR, and Jeffrey Engel. He's founding director of the Center for Presidential History at Southern Methodist University. Let's go back to the phones. We've got Joseph on the line from Long Island. Joseph, you have a question about the jury process. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Most people of any age,
yeah.
To your point, remember that they're people.
people often say, like, well, what can I do if you see that person on a street corner? Do you give them water? Do you give them a granola bar? Do you give them money? And there is no perfect answer. I think you do what right.
3 years next month that we've been here, night and day. I could never imagine that all of this would have taken.
Says he hopes the final dismissal helps the family continue to heal. For NPR News, I'm Paul Flash in Antonio. Kind of fiasco around this, and he's basically said, we only did one live reunion special, and
1 p.m.
Don to Ivers are the only ones who can destroy them. Died. I asked them, did you kill her? The first said, I'll neither affirm it nor deny it. The second said, wallowing in money in the CIA and Southeast Asia at the time, there was absolutely no accountability. If even one agent felt that Merton was a threat to the country, could have had him done in with no questions asked. The third person I met, who I met after my book came out a month or two ago, I said, did you kill Merton? He said, yes. And he said, the last 40 years of my life, I've been cleansing my soul of what I did for those 3 years of working with the CIA as a young man in Southeast Asia. So I think it can really be said now that Merton died a martyr, like his friend Luther King, who died the same year in April. Merton died in December. So I think this has to be part of the story.
And Bobby Kennedy died that
Bobby
same.
Kennedy that died in June of that year. Yeah.
So it was a really tumultuous time in the U.S., especially at that time.
Well, it was, and Merton did not hide behind his monastic seclusion. For example, he was very public about how he was mentoring Father Dan Berrigan and Philip Berrigan, Catholic priests who were committed to nonviolence, but also stood up and did actions to bring attention to the Vietnam War as a moral issue, despite a lot of time in jail. And they would go and visit Merton regularly at the monastery where he mentored them.
And through the Freedom of Information Act, I think that they know that Merton's correspondence was illegally opened and being by either the FBI or the CIA.
Exactly, just like King's had been. And it was against the law even back then. And also his phone calls were intercepted too. So he was definitely on the radar of the powers that be. And remember, he died, as you said, mysteriously in Bangkok, but he had just delivered an address to a couple hundred monks and nuns entitled Karl Marx and Monasticism. Now, this was not the most prudent choice for a title of a talk in Southeast Asia in 1916, at the height of the Vietnam War.
Of course, like Karl Marx.
He was dead 3 hours after the talk.
3 hours after the talk, and Karl Marx being considered the father of communism.
And the way Thomas Merton, I don't know if any of you know who Thomas Merton is. One of the things Thomas was a Catholic priest, and he became a Catholic priest because he grew up a Methodist, and he met my mother, and he fell in love with my mother, and she went, "Oh, Tommy, you're so cute. You write such nice poetry, but I couldn't even think about dating you. You're not even Catholic." So he went to become a Catholic so he could basically date my mom, and within my mom's vocabulary, dating is the same, means the same thing as it does today. And you don't have to be, most people who date aren't dating in a monastic kind of way. They aren't dating in a, see how red I'm getting? I was just in the sun just a little bit. Yes, I have a red hat. Let's see, does that make a difference? A little bit. Anyway, we're talking about was that, Merton gave this speech about, the economic system of the world, and 2 hours after he did it to a large body of monks, which the CIA were going after, as agents. They made great agents. And so he was in a bathtub, and there were electric heaters in this fancy hotel, and the heater had a very short cord, meaning so it couldn't get near the bathtub, right? But Thomas Merton was electrocuted because someone brought a long extension cord and plugged it in and plugged it in the heater and then dropped the heater into the bathtub. And basically, when they found Thomas Merton, he was stewed, cooked, you know, um, like a chicken. Anyway, Thomas Merton, once he started to write and once he had gone, and basically been touched, by Jesus Christ's love and truth and understanding, he started writing about this, but in a true social way, as Jesus did. I mean, that's why Jesus was put up on a cross by the Philistines and the rabbis, is because he was a threat to their economic system. I mean, he got put on that cross because he threw the money changers out of the temple. So we're having the same issue because what is polluting the earth is the money changers who are cutting down the rainforests and fracking every square inch of the water table. And right now, all through Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, we've had so much rain, it has filled up all of these coal mines, which the coal companies that made record profits last year went bankrupt this year, so they wouldn't have to deal with the environmental cleanup and just walked away and sold them to shell companies, on the nickel. And then all this rain came, filled those underground coal mines up, and pushed all the toxic materials that were down there up into the water tables of the people above. And so all these little towns who had wells, town wells, are now, everyone's getting sick. Right? And that East Palestine in Ohio, that train wreck of super toxic chemicals. There are 100 of those trains on the railroad of America every day. And there is an accident like that every day, but not as well publicized. And so, because that one was just horrific, and it was right in the middle of a town, and it affected a population surrounding of 2 counties of about 20,000 people. So that's enough to get, a national. And it was so horrific. I mean, when they set those cars on fire and then they blew up, it was like a mushroom cloud, and people had gotten a ton of video of that, and there was these images of, the sun was just coming up. It was still dark, and then boom, and there's this gigantic mushroom cloud, and it rises up into where the sun is coming up there, and then within a half an hour, it's kind of sunlight lit, and it's I mean, it was horrific imagery of like 20-minute video that went totally viral on YouTube. I don't know if it's up there anymore. They seem to take these things down quite quickly and not allowed to stay up there. Anyway, and that's why I name, there is no real reference point to any of the shows that I do. I mean, you just kind of have to go by what date it is, right? And so, how much juice do we have? YouTube doesn't like it when the laptop just dies. So there's 2 of you there. No thumbs up, no comments. Be nice if you, and most of the people who watch the show see it afterwards, not after it's live. So why don't you put a comment in the comments section? Then I could respond in the next show. Right? It's I built this to build like a community, an eco community. The ecology of the community, and we are cultivating a community. If we cannot have a eco-based economy that's coming from the spirit of the community that we cultivate, we aren't going to be here very much longer. And one reason why it's been postulated, meaning our technology is so good, like the Webb telescope up there in that null zone behind Jupiter. So it has no sun bothering it, has no radio waves bothering it. It's not being affected by anything we're doing per se. So it's getting to see some really like on the edge of the beginning of the universe. And the other thing that's quite interesting about it, it can see stars and it can see planets around the stars. Not only that, when the planets cross in front of the sun, they can see what the atmosphere is made out of just by the colors that come out of that. Right? Anyway, there's the boy. And since you guys really aren't involved, I just dropped in because I could, but I'm going to go now and see what he's up to. Okay? Okay, bye.